This is the Unstarving Musicians podcast. I'm your host, Rabonzo. This podcast features conversations with indie music artists and indie pros and me. It's all intended to help other artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey, the Unstarving Musician is made possible through the generosity of listeners like you. If you love the podcast, please visit our sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the different ways that you can support the podcast. Welcome to another interview. Welcome to another episode. Thank you for coming back or joining me for the very first time. This is kind of a special conversation. It's with my friend Ezra Vancil, who appeared back in episode 42, way back in March of 2018. I'm recording this intro. Well, actually, we recorded this round 2 interview the 20th of August this pandemic year, 2020. Ezra and I haven't known each other a super long time. In fact, we met on the socials prior to our 2018 conversation for the podcast. I have met him in person since then. He lives not too far away from my hometown of Fort Worth in Oak Cliff. He lives in Oak Cliff, the town where Stevie Ray Vaughan was born, and a great little place to visit. Got to meet him and his wife there for breakfast. It was great, and I'm hoping to see them again someday soon when I can travel again. So in this episode, we talk about, there are a couple of really good stories in this conversation. We talk about an arduous trip that Ezra took with his family for a festival, to Florida, for a festival he was going to be performing, and this trip was during the onset of the COVID pandemic of 2020. It's a bit of a horror story, in my opinion, moments of which were a bit of the Stand variety, and I'm talking about the Stephen King book, The Stand. Fortunately, it didn't go that sideways, but it was kind of scary nonetheless when I hear it, and you may find the same. Where he thought he was going next, and where he ended up going, is another topic of discussion we have. We also discuss his new album, The Family Songbook, on which his daughter Cozy makes her recording debut. I say that I'm not 100% sure about that, but it is a recording debut with her father on first time she appears on one of his works. I'm confident in saying that part. She sounds great. Ezra also shares quite a bit about his battles with depression, the changes in his life that he's made to deal with that, and how he copes with recurring ups and downs. Some of the tools he uses for that. And then a completely different topic. We talk about his sentiments on live streaming. He shares a really heartfelt tribute to a friend he recently lost. We talk about subscription-based fan support. And back to that friend he lost, something this friend and his friend's family did for Ezra after he left us. It's pretty touching. I'm going to have links in the show notes to Ezra's prior appearance on the podcast, as well as some other people that we mention here. Well, without further ado, here's me and Ezra Vancil. You know, I think the thing that inspired me to want to talk to you was the email exchange we had. You were responding to a question I had about Bandcamp, and then I'm on your list, as you probably know. The list is probably kind of big, but I also just get a lot of cool stuff from you. But since that day, I didn't look at the date. I was kind of rereading the email and grabbed some notes from it. Yeah. But since that day, I've been watching a little more closely what you're emailing out, just kind of curious what things are happening. So maybe we could start by talking about that. That day, I had actually emailed you to ask how your Bandcamp subscription thing was going, because I was just looking at,
And I unloaded on you.
Yeah. No, it was great. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. It was, at first I was a little sad, but then, you ended on a positive note because you were feeling upbeat about it. I'd love for you to kind of tell, for listeners, what you described to me about the festival, and this, maybe if you can remember the sentiment of your response to me when you said you unloaded.
Yeah. I probably won't completely remember it, but the festival for sure. So, yeah, when you wrote me, I was not happy. I wasn't a happy camper. And so this year, I got to back up a little bit because from our last conversation, it was years ago, but I was venturing out on really like a small private concert direction, and I had just dialed it in 2020. It was working. Things were happening in a way that I'd always imagined they could with these, and so that's where the frame of mind was when I went off to a festival that I was real excited about going and playing, and also playing with some different people down in Florida. And that's when it wasn't, I don't watch TV a lot. Like as a conscious effort, I don't entertain my, self with TV. So I don't know what's going on a lot of the time. So I started hearing little whisperings that, wait, there's something going on. And I was like, well, we'll figure it out when we get there, kind of thing. And people are like, well, they're probably going to cancel that thing. And I was like, what? I mean, this thing's been going on for 20 something years. I was like, no. And as we were leaving, I was an hour out of Dallas, and I got a call. We're sorry, we're having to cancel the festival.
Oh, wow.
Now, I decided not to tell my family because I was also going to use this as a time to go be with my family, And I don't want to tell them because they're all excited. So I drove all the way to Florida without telling them because there was, accommodations for us and all this. And so we went there. We actually had a wonderful time. We had our own concert in our little bungalow there, and it was beautiful. And on the way back, and over there, I started digesting kind of the news of what was going on, and this is a serious deal. And so we decided to cut it short. We had arranged that we could be there for a few weeks, and we decided to cut it short and get back to Dallas. But it was traumatic getting home. It was like I had walked into a Walking Dead movie almost, although not the carnage of it, but just of this ghost town kind of feeling on the way home. We drove, 8 hours trying to get home, and there was not one place that would let us use their bathroom. When we would go to stores, and people would be, lined up trying to use their bathroom. They wouldn't let them in the doors. And this was all the way home. Wow. 8 hours straight. And so, I can't lie, it freaked me out, So when I got back and I kind of digested all this, I was feeling, quite frankly, kind of exhausted by my music life at the time. And, it takes a lot. This, everybody that listens to this knows that it takes so much effort without a lot of financial reward, with great emotional reward sometimes, but not all the times. But you just keep going. And I've been going at this since I was like 17 years old, and I was getting like worn down. And this one thing, I first of all just had the feeling that this is not going away. Nothing happens like this where it's just going to be, we're going to be back at it in a month. And then after that, I just started seeing concerts cancel, home concerts cancel, all the way up to September. And so I was a bit down in the dumps. I decided, I had this desire to go back to my writing. I've written like 4 novels, and I never can get to finish them. Always something in the music life comes up. And so I decided to turn it into a positive. That's probably the positive note I left on, is that music will continue. I can't help make music and do it with all my heart, but I was going to turn my free time and my attention into finishing these novels. And that's where we left off, and everything has changed since then. That's where I was on that day, and so much has changed since then.
Okay, so let's pause for just a second. There's a couple things. One comment I wanted to make. I have not heard a story of someone who was traveling when all of this happened. And do you recall the exact date?
Oh, wow.
It would have been early March, right?
It was early March.
Yep.
I'd have to ask my wife to get the exact date.
So it's probably
the
the first 2 weeks of March.
It was literally, it was before anything shut down even. And,
oh my
and
gosh.
I guess Louisiana might have shut down while we were in Florida that day.
Okay.
And it might have been the day before, but it was right there when states started shutting down. And people find it hard to believe that I remain blissfully unaware of what's going on, but I consciously do that. And I hear enough of it from everybody that I feel like I've watched news all day long. But we practice that as a family. We just don't, and we don't absorb too much of what's going on. So for us, it was really kind of a shocker because I hadn't had the buildup of whatever buildup was there of days or weeks. I don't know. I'd only heard little rumors of people talking. So it was quite a shock to us,
Well, I would say, I mean, we're a little like your family, my wife and I, in that we, television news is never on in our house. My wife reads financial news, which kind of covers a lot of stuff, so she will hear about stuff. And of course, I can't open my browser without seeing, something about, what's happening in the outside world, and then people were talking. But what I was going to say is that, I'll just keep it to myself, but for what it's worth, people way smarter than me, there were very few of them that knew how serious this was going to be that early. I think most of us were just like, oh, okay, and then, wow, this is real, and then, well, it'll probably blow over, no, I don't think anybody imagined it would turn into what it did.
No. Well, in fact, when I came back, to me, so that is what I saw of it, was, the scene of every town we stopped at, my little girl begging to go to the bathroom, and people not letting us in.
It's almost like the zombie apocalypse. I hadn't heard anything like this.
It felt like that. And so when I came back, this is how slowly it moved, and I started telling people, y'all, this is the thing. There is something huge. And most people I knew were like, man, they knew the news, and they're like, oh yeah, well, did you just go to the bathroom outside or whatever? They didn't take it seriously, almost like it was this weird day we had or something. But to me, it was a sign that the hammer was coming down in some way on this country, on the world, or whatever. And so I saw it much more seriously than most people did before it came in, just to be experiencing that.
Sure. Frightening. The other thing, if you're comfortable talking about it, I suspect you are based on our prior conversation for the podcast, but you'd mentioned you were having a particularly down day, the day you responded to me, and then later in this thread you were saying things have completely changed. And I was reading through a few of your last emails and sort of reminded to your self-admission that you can be a little up and down.
Yeah.
Do you
definitely.
have you been as of late struggling with depression or?
No, that's a good topic. That really is. Yeah. So my past is that I was diagnosed bipolar and later schizoaffective, though I never, me and my wife, nobody really bought that one. But so in my early life, it was insane. It was a decade of our life just pretty much wiped away that was just dealing with me. I've had an incredible change in my life that happened it was getting close to 8 years ago. That is very complicated to get into, but it changed everything. In a lot of ways, I have not changed in the way that I can go up and down, but I've learned to harness it and to actually use it in my life for the things that we need to get by, the way I've learned a way of life that has worked incredibly for this. It's a good question because yes, this falling down on this, the pandemic coming in has threw me off kilter. It was like a bat to the side of the head, experiencing things I haven't experienced in, like I said, like 7 or 8 years at all. Difficulties in my life that I had, my system was working and it was well-oiled machine, not just me, but this is a whole family thing of us working together, making a beautiful life. And it really just sideswiped me. I did go through some depressions that I haven't had that kind of depression in a very long time. And they were very short-lived. I used all my tools and got back to where I needed to be. But it has been completely life-changing. And emotionally in my emotional life and everything, life changing. But I only see it as, okay, this is a new era. It's a new time in my life where I have these new pressures. I had all pressures before. These are new ones that I need to work with. And I've spent, since we've talked, probably spent those months really working on my life and getting it back in a balanced place.
That's great.
But I definitely have been through, and I don't want to go off on this too much, but probably the first thing that hit me when all this was coming down, because I'm in a community of people. I've kind of, my life has become about being around and helping people like me, not just with that, but I've struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction. And that was my first thought. While people were worrying about businesses shutting down and old folks' homes and all this, my first thought was suicide. It's going to fly. Because I literally know people that are wrestling daily with just getting out of bed and dealing with the world that was already there. And it just frightened me to death of what could happen to, especially artists. You know, artists are, I've just known this, and you probably know this, especially empathetic people. They take on a lot. They have, their emotions are like laid out there. And when this was coming in, and I got shut down a lot because that was my concern, was people's emotional lives and what that would do. How many deaths would we have from that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Are you comfortable talking about some of the tools that you have leaned on as of late, assuming that it might help someone else who hears about this?
Yeah, definitely. You know, and they're so, you know, I could have, in the first years, I probably even had it all written out, how my daily structure and routine, it's so integrated into my life now that it is our way of life. The first thing, you know, so I have to back up a little bit with that too, because though I do have these mood swings, I learned the first thing is that I was a severe alcoholic, and now it was onset by this, me trying to control it with a substance. And the first thing was to get other things out of my life that were in any way affecting that mood. So I could see what I really was, because I had been on medications, way too many medications, and I was mixing all kinds of things in there, to the point where I had to know it. What am I dealing with? I'm not even sure. So the biggest part of me was just really getting sober and dry, and being very conscious and aware of who I am. And that was probably the hardest part for me, because, you know, I also dealt with daily panic attacks for years. They're just every single day, all day long. I had to sit with those. And I got all these ideas from, finally, just in desperation, I started looking into research on people that live with chronic pain. And I'm like, how do you do it? Because I wanted to kill myself. I didn't know how to live anymore. How do you do it? And it was radical acceptance.
Yeah.
They're, you know, it's been a long time since I've read that material, but it was about embracing this pain into your life, because it's there, and it's something has to be done with it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Radical Acceptance was a book, among other things, yes?
Oh, I don't know. That I say that, and maybe I've caught that through when I actually read like papers on the internet.
Got it.
About that kind of chronic pain.
Okay, and it's probably,
but, I don't know that book specifically.
No, it's probably just a well-known concept, and I think I've heard this recently, and it makes me think of Tara Brach, who's a pretty famous meditation teacher, who's written a book that has maybe that title or something very similar. But anyway, I digress.
That name's very familiar to me.
Yeah, I digress. So please continue.
Yeah. I pull in. It's hard for me to cite things because I'm also a avid reader. So I mean, literally, if I pointed my camera around, there's about 6 books open right now. So I don't always retain where I'm getting a lot of the things. I'm there for a reason to look for help. You know, yeah. That was a main one was this acceptance of my panic, of my anxiety, of my pain, and sitting with it. Meditation was definitely the first thing that came in to allow me to start dealing with panic attacks. This all played into the bipolar stuff because a panic attack would send me off for a week. You know, I'd end up in a hospital. And so they all were together. So meditation came in, and very simple meditation at the beginning was just finding a little 5-minute breathing meditation and arresting panic attacks as they happened. Very hard work to do that. It's not, I've talked to somebody recently with panic attacks, and they're like, I can't do that. I can't just stop in the middle of a panic attack and go, yeah. Well, I don't know what the other options were, because I had to get some power over these things. The actual depression and mood swings. So that was anxiety, and that a lot of anxiety I found was and I pull a lot of this from the 12 steps also, is a life that I had never inventoried. And that's a word from there. I had just all these things, all these decisions, unfinished things, all people I'd hurt, I'd been hurt, and I had never finished it, went back to look at it. I didn't know what my life was. And so anxiety to me personally was wrapped up in undecisiveness, and that met with a lot of fear. So I started on and this was actually from a book, and I can't remember it, but I started deciding on things that I didn't really need to. If somebody says, where do y'all want to go to eat? I would make the decision, because I wouldn't do that. I'd always go, wherever you want to go. And I started exercising this decisiveness in myself. Whether it's right or wrong, it didn't matter. The lack of a decisions in my life was causing major anxiety. And so I exercised that. The actual depression and the mood swings, to be honest, I started calling my superpowers. And I get this partly from a biography I read, I think, about Beethoven. And I think it's Beethoven. Was he the one that dealt with mania? I don't
Good
know.
question. I'm not
It's
sure.
one of those guys.
Yeah.
Okay. He figured out in his low times, he wrote this wasn't Beethoven. Okay, just go with me. It was somebody.
I'm hanging with you.
He could actually write poetry, and it actually was it worked very well with this side of his creativity. And this type of work he could do when he was in depression very well. He could hone in. Kind of like, I think I talked to you about my guitar practicing craziness.
Yeah.
That was in deep depression, but I could hone in and almost just be a flesh being working on my muscles, So finding those things, what is this depression useful for? My mania, what is that useful for? And where do I set some boundaries where when signals are going off that it's gone on too far? And so that's really like the main thing. There was all kinds of little tactics in my life. I had shutdown days. That's why it involves my family, is that at any point I could just shut everything down, cancel everything, not go to work, not get up, not do anything, and be with my family. And strangely enough, that was like the medicine I needed, to be with them. Because life, in this time I was still busy, and I would be pulled off this way and that. And I would people didn't like it. I just cancel everything for a couple of days and just be Ezra. And allowing that power in my life, that I can cancel anything, It was a drastic step, and I had to do it, though. And that went on for years, where I at any time could cancel anything. I didn't care what the consequences were, because it was my life or death thing. And I could probably just ruminate and go on with that, but those are a few of the tactics that I used. And acceptance is the very foundation of everything, though.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's how I live now, is in complete acceptance of, I don't live, that came off wrong. I don't live in acceptance. I live a life that is working and trying to accept everything in my life.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that is helpful to me. It's helpful to a lot of people, or will be, rather. I don't have a history with a lot of depression. I have had a couple of episodes in my life. One of them somewhat recent, since we've been here in this particular home in Panama, and the prior one was way back. But I recognize recognize it now. And anyway, yeah, thanks for sharing it. It's really good stuff. And there's probably an
I've
extended
did
toolkit, right? You should probably write this up for people to.
I could probably do that. I wanted to drop one more in there because you had mentioned I'd written an open letter, and that actually has some of the tools that I use today in that open letter on my website, which is because, I have the 12 steps in my past too, so a higher power became a part of my life. And so I do spend every morning orienting my life, kind of looking at the day before. This is I've seen it kind of pop up in Stoicism. I'm like, oh, maybe that came over from there, of actually taking account of my day and then at night and waking up thinking about my day and having that time where I basically accept what is before me and give it to my higher power.
Does that what does that involve for you? I'm familiar with this practice, and I've done it very off and on, more off than on. But I like it's an attractive concept to me. But does it involve, for instance, journaling some stuff, or is it more of a mental visual inventory?
So there's different ways to do it. There is some Stoic, like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, some writings where they actually have some technical ways to do it. I know Benjamin Franklin has a book on how he did something very similar with this, with a blotter on a calendar. The way I do it is the 12-step way, which is literally an inventory, as if my life is a business, and all the things and all the people and all the relationships and the pains and the fears are this inventory on the shelf. And so it is a way, in that philosophy of the 12-step philosophy, you spend a part of the beginnings of working these steps in a massive cleanup and going back everywhere. And you make this, for me, it was a huge inventory. And after that, it's called keeping your side of the street clean, which is a daily thing. Because if I let go of this, and I do too, I'm kind of off and on too. But if I let go of it, I will all of a sudden just be completely out of sorts and not know why. And really can't even point at anything because I haven't kept any kind of track of what my life and all the inventory in my life and the relationships. And so it's really a way of tackling things with little bites instead of just waking up one day and having to get the bulldozer out and go, overhaul your whole life. But it literally is a writing down of an inventory, almost like I was a business,
I like that.
and taking account of these things.
Yeah, it's a good visual. I don't know what it'll take for me to be more on or a little more on, but I do like certainly talking about it is inspirational. So maybe I'll give it a shot tonight again, see where it goes for the next couple days. So let's talk about getting the album done, the Family Songbook. And I guess there is also a nice story about Cozy in here.
Yeah, Cozy.
So
that's my daughter.
Tell me about it.
Well, it's a nice story about COVID and Cozy because this all kind of runs together. And I've got to look for, a bright spot in the storm. And this kind of came about during all this. I was in the middle of making an album, and suddenly nobody wanted to, come over anymore. And nobody wanted to work in a studio.
Oh, right.
And so I was completely separated from people, and everybody just kind of fell off. And I was sitting here with a nearly finished album. And mostly it was female vocalists. I love working. I have a few female vocalists that I work with, and I love working with them. But they weren't going to be able to be there for finishing this album. And I thought, I've got a daughter in there who's taking voice lessons, who loves to sing, who's been sitting next to me with her little guitar all her life. So I brought her out in the studio, and long story short, during this lockdown period, we ended up writing one of the songs together, a co-written song. She's also been learning guitar and writing songs. We co-wrote a song, which is probably the best song on the album, that it just completed this 12-song album. It just made it all. So it was meant to be. Then we started, she sang on and completed some of the stuff that Lori and Kim couldn't complete. And we also have written a full EP We have a band website. She's working on T-shirt designs.
Nice.
And we're starting a band as part of her. It's really kind of, we homeschool her. So it's part of her curriculum is I don't want, my parents just thrust me out into the rock and roll world and be like, oh, that's great. Go for it. And I went off to LA. I want to go in there with her. Now, at some point, she doesn't want the old man behind her, I'm sure. But to kind of show her the lay of the land, or at least of what I've learned. And it's really incredible. It's one of the most beautiful things in music to sit down finally. It is always with somebody else that's learning to give this away to somebody. But with my daughter, it's just extra special, and we've developed this music relationship. We're constantly talking about lyrics and this song and that. It's really cool.
How old is Cozy?
She is 13.
Wow.
She was 12 when we started our little musical venture, and she just turned 13 in April.
Well, I know she's filling some big shoes, both figuratively and literally, based on the recordings you've done in the past with the, and especially you have a female bassist, right? That you've been singing with.
That's Lori.
Lori, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and she's all over this album. Of course, she's been with me over a decade, and will continue on. I did have to kind of pull some strings to get the album done because musicians weren't willing to get together. Studios, of course, were closing, and so. But they're all over it. My regular band is all over the album.
Oh, good. It's funny. I keep mentioning this like it's a plug on every episode here for the past couple weeks or a few weeks. But so I did my first bona fide solo recording ever, and I just finished the recording process. Wow. But I happened to be in a situation, not just because of COVID, where I was dealing with remote musicians. So I did invest in recording gear for recording acoustic drums at home and recording some voice and doing a guitar demo to give to a real guitar player. And so my primary collaborator is actually located in Fort Worth or Arlington, I forget.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. And he happens to be a wonderful engineer and just a great musician. And then the third guy is someone I played with in California, who I didn't know was actually set up to record. He was at the tip top of my list with another guy who's neighbors with the Tarrant County guy. But one was set.
And what does the guy in California play?
Oh, he plays bass. Yep, plays bass, and he's one of the more formally educated players I've played with. He's really got a great grasp on theory. He's got an amazing ear, and on top of that, he's one of these people that really knows how to lift everybody around him. And it's really amazing. That's one of the nicest things about him, but he's just a fun person and a great player. So, one guy wasn't set up for recording, was trying to get there, and life was sort of happening for him, but the other one in California was ready to go. So anyway, I'm just kind of laughing because for me, I didn't have any choice but to record, remotely. There was no going to studios or meeting up with people anyway. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and there's something really neat about that too. I embrace both worlds, and sometimes it's out of necessity. Some of my players are in Nashville, so I do have remote work that I do too.
Wow.
And it is a different feeling. I get a different result that way.
Sure.
But it's still a good one, and especially like you mentioned, if we have this relationship and it's more than just, hey, I'm sending this off to some guy. It's about us creating something together.
Yeah.
It's all there. All the magic's still there.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it is different. I have a friend who's like yourself. He's been in the business a long time, and he was actually in a really big band for a long time, but he's, like in the last few years, launched his first ever solo career to a completely changed face of music. But he was telling me he's finished his second album. It's not distributed yet, but he was telling me he just, he loves to be at a studio with other players, and that's just part of how he gets into it. But he's never done it another way because he's set up to do demos at home, but he's not really, I don't think he feels like he's set up to do anything high quality at the moment, even though he totally could, but not everybody wants to mess with that.
Yeah. And, and I think I'm definitely one that likes the real person experience in studios. Sure. I left that for many years, though. So excited with all the technology, but I found that I can't say. I mean, the songs I've created remotely are beautiful. They're some of my favorite songs. So it's not so much about the recording so much as I love that in my life. I love that feeling. Like the album, I put out an album in 2018 called You.
Mm-hmm.
I made that in Austin at a studio.
Oh, nice.
We locked up in there and we slept in the studio. And so that is just something I'm always looking for a way to, how can I expand the experiences of my life while I'm doing, this work. And that's one of them.
That's nice.
As much as possible, I get together with people.
Yeah, I have this, I think it was in Keith Richards' book. One of the stories of recording was in, there's a few of them, of course, but it was in France for some girls in some tiny little dumpy place, but he really just has fond memories of the sound. And here I am and I know a lot of people, a lot of this has been through this. I'm in this acoustically challenging room that doubles as a guest room. And like, when I first started, I'm like, how am I going to make this work? And, there's barely space. And, where I'm recording right now, in fact, I call it the hole because it's not really properly set up for any sort of work, but I just made it work. Mm-hmm. But it would be fun to go, like you say, there has to be a lot of fun in going and having a different experience whenever you can when you're recording.
And it accesses a different part. Like my studio sounds like yours. My engineer literally screams at me sometimes. He gets so frustrated with all the noise and the weird, frequencies, buildups and stuff. But it accesses a different part of me when I have somebody else running the controls. That and like I said, I don't know that musically how much it changes, but it certainly changes the experience that I have in making a recording.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Like the whole sleeping, it's a little romantic. We're sleeping in the studio in Austin,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were sleeping. I've got funny stories about that one. But sleeping there, creating stories. There's a video up there called "The Making of Settle Down Good." It's some of the footage from when we were there, and it was just really neat.
Yeah, that's a good album, I think. Hold on. I think I have a nice copy of it right here.
Hey, looky there. You got it.
I wanted to have it on my backdrop here. I just shoddily put this together with some painter's tape, except for this guy here who's not even in full frame. But, I need to get like a board because I wanted this to be up there because it's such a cool looking cover.
Yeah, you ought to do like a lot of studios I go into, they'll have now of course people don't really do CDs much anymore, but they'll have a wall of albums that they've done. Yeah. And you could have interviews. Maybe people would send you a CD or a record or something, and you could have a wall behind you of all the people you've interviewed.
Yeah. I thought about that because I got Johnny Bergen here. Actually, you probably can't really see him too well, but I actually played my first house concert, which was a big build-up, in February. He came here, and we did a little club date. Then we did a cruise, a private cruise thing, and then we did a house concert at a really lovely venue close by. And he's just such a fine player and singer. But we got involved. My wife and I got involved in a restaurant called Rock and Taco, and we had mentioned to him we wanted to adorn the inside of it with music memorabilia, and so he made one of the first donations and an autograph.
Very cool.
So I thought,
that's the kind of stuff you need.
I figured if enough people see that, they'll start sending me.
Yeah.
So shout out to him. He's a cool guy. I didn't realize that. You had geared up so heavily for house concerts, and I feel for you. For me, I'd been enamored with the idea for over a year before it happened, and then I was able to make that one happen, and I just feel like so lucky that it happened the month before all of this. But like you, I have there's this couple that lives in I believe they're in Washington State, and I'm at a loss trying to remember that, but they for years their whole livelihood cycle was in January she was completing a new album every January. They would start reaching out to their community, which is all over the country, and they would strictly do house concerts, and that's it. Yeah. And he's her producer, so he would go and kind of be a road producer, but now they out of necessity, they weren't sure what they were going to do, but they switched to, they actually used Zoom, and they were trying to make it an immersive experience. Actually attended one, but he gets to play now, which is an upside, because before he wasn't able to, just because logistically it didn't make sense. So he can actually perform with her, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, everything. It was becoming so much of my life that I felt like, except to distribute music, I didn't need the internet anymore.
Yeah.
I was making more new listeners were coming so fast, and it was so much more. There's so much more connection there with the fans that I was making in that way.
Through house concerts.
That I was getting further and further away from. I was forgetting to post anything on the internet. Though we would do live streams too, because there's always somebody that can't make it, or or there's people across the country that want to sit in on this house concert.
Yeah.
But I really loved that era, and I put it to bed with a good feeling in my heart. It's once again, it's just a beautiful era in my life. I don't know when or where or what it'll look like when it comes back. But for me right now, I just see it as I'm like you said, I'm so grateful that I had those years.
Good.
To have those experiences,
That's good. Well, hopefully we'll both get to do it again at some point. But if
let's hope.
If I don't,
knock on wood.
Yeah, I know. If I don't, it's I did it, so it's good. I'll live with that.
Yeah.
What's your son working with you on, which may have nothing to do with music? I don't know, but you said your son's working.
It doesn't. Well, it's so strange. Everything does wrap around COVID. Like my entire life it looks completely different. So, and it's another thing that I'm extremely grateful for, is that I finally, with the decision to lay off of music in the way that I had been doing, I got a job. And this actually happened before COVID, and I hated it. And I was just like, oh, I was so deflated and felt so horrible that I had went back to the normie world, and I wasn't running around with my guitar. But there's all these really neat things that happened. First of all, I needed to hire somebody. And so I hired my son, who's 21. And I work in marketing. And when COVID hit, everything that I was deflated about this new career and everything, I saw how blessed I was. And so I've completely embraced it as a time that I get to spend with my son every day. And but it's my main gig right now of making money is that. And I think I'm more busy in music and other art things than I was when I had it all to myself to do, because I just come straight home and I'm just ready to spend the night doing things.
And I know not all jobs are this way, but is it kind of like when you're done for the day, you're kind of done with it until the next day?
Yeah. And that's something I didn't realize either.
You forgot.
I forgot, because I've had real jobs. I've had jobs in marketing, and I had forgotten there is a payoff for this, is that I can now put it in this corner of my life and work and making money with just, through music. And I did all kinds of side jobs when I needed to pay the bills. Was chaos, because I never knew when anything was coming. I didn't know I would be working all night this night, and then I've got to drive out here. It was, and so there's something really nice of going, okay, that's done, and now I'm free. Because it never ended. It was 24 hours a day before that.
Yeah, and not to advocate to everyone to get a job, but jobs
are good.
Are you? I know. Yeah. Are you actually also unencumbered musically in a way, because you don't have to worry as much about making ends meet? Now you can go just do your art.
Yeah, and this is a huge thing. Little things that I remember is that, because I had a good 5-6 years of just music, really. Mm-hmm. And I would do side jobs, but it was mainly, and so I forgot that, and I didn't realize how much I spent just trying to get money for recordings. When you're touring, stuff is breaking constantly. I was broke every moment of every day, and just trying to get my albums done and trying to make them not with $50, And so it was that, again, that there is a lot of relief in that, and that I can now budget that and be a little more free with how I work in music,
That's cool. I have another repeat offender on the podcast. Her name's Laura Price. We met in California, but she lives in Austin now. She's a wonderful singer, songwriter, and I don't know if it was a decision right when she got to Austin, but we're mutually acquainted with a guy named Ray Prim out of Austin, who he had a full-time life in music years ago, but for many years he's had a job and he plays music how and when he wants to, and he's really good. She said to me, I decided I was going to take a page out of his book and go find a job, but the last time I talked to her, so she did find a job, I guess, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and when I talked to her somewhat recently, she basically has upgraded her job. She's got quite a nice job now, and the thing she said to me, she says, I don't have to play covers anymore. And metaphorically speaking, I guess is what I was reaching for there. That sort of means
I think
a lot.
we all know what that means, because I love playing covers, but when you have to play covers,
exactly.
It's a different thing.
I forgot what song she mentioned, but we all have one or two of these, and she said, I don't ever have to play that song unless I want to, So,
yeah.
But yeah, there was clearly a certain freedom. And I also read, so Derek Sivers recently,
the CD baby guy.
Yeah, he recently published a series of books, and the one I picked up, much of the stuff I'd read through some blogs and interviews he'd done, but he had this passage in there about the most successful artists that he knows are the ones who have jobs.
Yeah.
They're the happiest, and they're, I guess, it speaks to that unencumbered facet that they have with their art once they're not worried about and having to deal with all the overhead of trying to run the business of the music or the painting or whatever it is, or both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really, really true. And and I was just getting to a point when everything fell apart that I could see, like, the job that I do have now was built for touring. Like, I'm remote, I can go into an office, but it was built for my music life to continue on just like I'd always done. Though now I'm just treating it as my full day. But there is a lot of let's say temptations of compromise when my music is my business and my income. I would do a lot of things that I don't have to do now, and I would play shows that I don't have to play, and I didn't want to play them then, but it was that, or the water was going on, but it also, like, in the deeper realms of the artist's mind, it can get into the writer's room, and it can get into what song I'm going to put out first, and the way I produce this. And for me, in very little ways, decisions were being made about the business of music before let's say they threatened that ecosystem that I love, which is making the music, and it's all about that. But I could see it starting to encroach on that, even down to, like, I have popular songs like everybody does, that when I would play, I had to play the popular songs to, for these type of venues and everything, where I was off for that. I was years off of those songs,
Yeah.
And I don't have to do that so much anymore,
Yeah. You can Kurt Cobain it or Michael Stipe it and just say, I don't go there anymore.
I'll just turn around on stage and not look at anybody.
Well, it's nice. And then someday you'll be comfortable playing those again.
Yeah, and they come back around, Yeah.
Let's see what else I got here. I'm not tweeting. Let's see. I had some more stuff I want to talk to you about as we approach the end of our time together. Something I found kind of interesting. You said, you described how you feel in this new age of, I guess, live streaming. Those weren't your words, but just sort of where you're not as much, perhaps, I'm putting words into it in between the lines, but maybe where you're not interacting with people as much. And the particular thing I read was one of your emails, and you had an opportunity to do something with a local station. I guess it was KBTX, and you did a live thing for them. I know probably a lot has transpired in that short time, but how do you feel today about being involved in any live streams? Would it only be something if it's by invitation and they're doing all the heavy lifting? I'll be there and I'll show up and play and do my best. Or
right.
do you do them yourself? Will you do them yourself?
I'm still kind of I have done a few more since then, and I'm still kind of on the fence about the whole thing. I think what describes it best, I was with some friends, and one of them is putting together a whitewater rafting trip. And somebody asked, is that live or on Zoom? He was asking everybody if they wanted to go. And that describes everything to me, is that the experience. Now, I'm kind of jealous of people that are just, like you mentioned, somebody just coming into this. Maybe to them, it's just what it is, For me, this is not why I do music. I do, and I say particularly for what I was doing was something much more than, and I don't want to sound pompous or anything, but it was literally about a human connection, and it was
Sure.
about the closeness of people. That was part of the formula, is cramming them as close as possible, and the smallness of venues and having the relationship. That's really the only reason I played live anymore. I've played, the gig thing and the festival thing. I've done all that to death, and I was experiencing what I always thought it could be, which was relationships with people and creating experiences that are profound. And it's not just me doing it. I'm just there facilitating this group of people having an experience of a lifetime. And so when I say all that, pulling out the Zoom and doing that kind of thing is so foreign to me. I've tried it. I've tried it in better situations, and that one situation was just an easy one to do. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to climb on top of this, And, and there's something, because I have to back, like a lot of people listen probably don't, we've talked that, my life is kind of, my music life, you can't put it in a business plan because it's personal.
Sure.
And I had an experience that it defines my life. I just wanted to kill myself for 10 years. I tried to, and I nearly succeeded, and I woke up. And so when I came out of that, I realized that I really have a quest in music, and it's something that I don't know that I can do in that way, And not to say I won't do it, but I can't pour myself into something, a whitewater rafting trip on Zoom every week, because that's what a live concert is to me. It was a profound experience with people in a room.
Yeah.
And so it's so different to me. I can't wrap my head around it, to be honest.
I understand, especially with the time that you had put in both performing live at public venues and then the songwriter festivals, and then however many months you were doing the house concert thing. And from what I have learned about house concerts, only having done one, but I spent a lot of time learning about them and talking to people about them, I can imagine where this would be tough. There's a guy that I'm going to send you his Facebook thingy, because he does live streams live a couple times a week. He's a longtime friend I played with, and he's not done enough writing in his life. He's done a little bit way back when, but he just loves performing and he loves entertaining people. And it was with some reluctancy he got into it. You guys have had very different paths, but with some reluctancy he got into it, into streaming live. And I invited him on the podcast after I watched one of his shows, and we talked about it. And it was pretty fun. It was interesting, but I don't know if he'll be any sort of inspiration or just like an interesting thing for you to see. How someone who's kind of has come at music a different way is dealing with it. Now he's kind of still in that music is all I do. It's all I know. So he's still doing it, but I think he's having fun, and he's getting well compensated. And the one thing he said to me that I'll never forget when we had talked for the podcast about it, he said, I could kick myself for not setting up like a Venmo and PayPal a long time ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm not knocking it at all. I actually, one of my best musical friends who's a full-time musician, his name's Paco Estrada. And he was a touring artist. Now he is on the online thing. He knows it. I bring this stuff up to him, and he just kind of looks at me like, "What's your problem?" Like, get out there and do your thing. So I know some people adapt very well to it. I just, I have to have a huge carrot to put all the effort I do into what I do, as we all do.
Yeah.
And that carrot isn't looking really yummy to me right now.
Yeah. Well, I can relate in that. Like, I have a tough time getting on and just doing a 2, 3, 4 minute live thing on, Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and which is something I really should do for people, to sort of build awareness for the podcast and to offer stuff that will help musicians, hopefully. And I just have the toughest time, and I've started doing it, tippy-toeing in, and it's kind of train wreckish, but I think that's also part of it. But you bring up a good point, what's the carrot? What does it look like? What's it taste like?
And you might have seen this if you're following me. I would do that. I would jump on Instagram and do live things, and all my home concerts, all my concerts were streamed live. But it was all in course of doing my mission and in life. It was all part of that. Yeah, and now I'm like, what is it part of? So, and it's something mentioned that I don't know if it'll ever happen, but this next phase, what was supposed to happen in 2020 for me, was to take this intimate concert and this relationship that I have with people, and I went and played for an aunt that was in an old folks home with my daughter. This is way before COVID, and she had a roommate there, and then other people were coming in the door. Most of the beautiful musical experience I've ever had. And so we would go back and play there. And I also got an opportunity to play at a prison and talk, also in all the experience of my life is probably the most beautiful musical experience I've ever had. And so phase 2 was to take this intimacy even further. And I'd even asked the old folks home down the street if we could come on Sundays and play a concert. Yeah. And I was checking in. I was starting to talk to some people I know in prison work to see how can I get in there, because, it is about the music. It's about the fun toys of music. It's about all the recording and the fun stuff of it. I love all that stuff, but it's got to connect deeply to what my life is about and give something that I'm going to take with me, or it's just not going to make it in the schedule. I might want it in the schedule. It's just not going to make it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that happens. I hope that your books get published. And
yeah, me too.
I look forward to hearing your daughter on the new album. That's really cool. I want to thank you for spending time with me a second time for this round 2. I wanted to tell you one last thing. I've been thinking about this off and on, but it came in my head today, maybe because we were talking. But your first conversation for the podcast is one of a few that stick out that has a really nice story within the entire conversation. And I wanted to put together a series of episodes that just have like my favorite stories that were told on the podcast. And they're usually, they're almost always pretty heavy. But I wanted to make sure and include that one in there. And
That's the rich things in life.
Yeah. I was thinking as we were talking, like, I should run these by you, see what you think of them, to hear, what some of these other people have said on there, just to see what you think.
I wish I could switch my screen around. I was going to show you, maybe I'll send you a screenshot. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts anymore. I used to a lot. But you are one of 3 music podcasts that I still will let it run through. So I still listen to your episodes.
Nice. Thank you.
So, I love what you're doing. I'm glad that you just keep doing it, and, just keep going with it, because I think it's a real special thing. And you have a way of interviewing that is really neat. I've done a lot of interviews, and it's always like just a nice conversation with you.
Thanks.
And I want to throw something in here. I hope I don't extend you past any deadline.
No.
That might be kind of neat. And it's something I want to. I had a friend that passed away on Monday. Actually, when you called, I was just trying to get all the crying out of me.
I'm sorry.
So I was like, I don't know what this podcast is going to be like. But it goes to speak to so much of what I talk about. Is he wasn't just a fan. He was a friend and a lifelong friend. But he was my biggest fan, and he supported me, and unlike anybody I've ever known. And his name was Peter Silico. And I wanted to honor him by saying that. But I also, I switched from Patreon to Bandcamp a while back. And our conversation was started from you asking about that Bandcamp. And it's really neat. So right before this interview, I saw his son call me. And I was like, I can't pick it up. I'm just going to start crying. And
oh, no.
I'm just going to sit here and cry on your show. And what he had done is somebody had given his father a grant. And they wanted to know my Bandcamp because they said, we wanted to give it to something he would care about. And of course he would give it to Ezra. He would support Ezra.
How sweet.
And it's the thing that I'm talking about, it's just that, I've been trying to get my audience smaller and smaller so that I can have something of this rich experience that's really like, that somebody's, and he's more than a fan, but it goes to speak for, of having something in their life that is profound enough that I am a part of that through the music and the experiences I brought to people, and the money doesn't even matter. It's that sentiment that my life meant something, that the work that I do, whether I don't care if I've played all the shows with 2 people in the audience, I want it to matter to them.
Yeah.
I want it to be a fun night, to be an experience. And, I thought that was kind of neat, bringing it back to like the Bandcamp thing and the subscription thing of, that too is a relationship,
Yeah.
and that, these relationships are the most important things we have.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm sorry for your loss. And secondly, thank you for sharing that. And thirdly, I guess, nice way to bring it full circle.
Yeah. It's from all those days of podcasting.
That's great.
Well, tied up in a nice bow at the end.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks, Ezra. When I get back in town, when I can travel from here to there, because I want to see my brothers, we'll have to get together for breakfast again, I hope. And
absolutely
be a blast, man.
Yeah, and you know what? This time I have a drum set in my living room because our band is rehearsing here, so it'll be ready for you. You'll come over breakfast, and then we can jam.
That sounds great. I have listened to the drums on your albums and go, man, I'd love to just hear what that snare sounds like in the room. So anything that you record with, I'd really love to or contemplate recording with. I'd really love to hear the tuning on it. So that would be a blast. I'll take you up on that for sure.
All right. Well, come on over.
All right, man. Good talking with you, buddy.
You too.
All right.
It's good seeing you.
Have a good one. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. 2 things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community are a website and an email list. Bandzoogle can help you do both. Plus, a solid website makes you look legitimate. Serious musicians, singers, songwriters, composers, and performers know this to be true. If you don't yet have your own website, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I use it and I love it. It's as easy to use gets, and you don't have to worry about plugin updates and security patches. Bandzoogle takes care of all that for you. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial and use the promo code ROBONZO to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. This episode was powered by ConvertKit. I have been a ConvertKit user since early 2016, and I really love it for the email marketing aspects of what I do. It's more than just an email marketing company, though. They are focused on landing pages, too, giving beginner creators everything they need to start building their email lists. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms, and you can choose from multiple templates, personalize them with design, include an incentive email, create a thank you page, manage all your subscribers, and of course send broadcast emails. The support is great, and that is important to me. To learn how ConvertKit can help you connect with your audience so that you can make a living doing work you love, go to unstarvingmusician.com/convert or the show notes for this episode. Did you know you can help other independent artists find this podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening to your podcast these days? It really does help, so I hope you will consider it. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music bands. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.